Welcome to this edition of the Rust Room, and we have a long overdue Rust Room interview for you with the guy sitting over here to my right, who is going to be talking to you about things that you really need to be hearing about. You might have heard him. We've done lots of interviews in varying forms, but this one is the Rust Room format, so it's kind of let it all hang out and very organic. And here's our goal. We were having, as a matter of fact, you can't see, but if you could look behind the camera, there's a whiteboard back there. Believe it or not, we do some preparation for these things, especially with him because he's all about preparation. I like to wing it a little bit more. And we have a whiteboard back there saying, okay, so what are we going to cover? What are we going to talk about? And I said, basically, we're going to tell your story, but ultimately, what's this about? What this is about is the fact that you're in business, and if you are typical, you're not doing any business training. So Rick Sapio, sitting over here to my right, is going to talk to you about business principles that I've incorporated into my business life that have been absolutely transformational. And at my urging now, he's taken these principles out into the world of the entrepreneur and into the world of chiropractic. And hundreds of I think over 800 chiropractors at this point, right, Rick, have been trained and counting in these business principles with transformational results. So ultimately, though, he's kind of a character, interesting person with some profound insights that we're looking forward to sharing with you here on the Rust Room. So, hey, first of all, Rick, thanks for coming all the way up to New Jersey from the sunny warmth of Dallas right into a snowstorm that we're having right now.
Wow, yes.
Well, yes. You know, normally I can't shut him up.
Yeah. I'm happy to be here. So, you know, it's funny. I like the opening. When you think about the fact that you go somewhere every day to work, why not think about it from this perspective? If you're not building a growing, profitable, enduring, saleable business so that at some point in the future you can sell it for $5, $10, $15, or $20 million, then why don't you just get a job somewhere? Because the stress of owning a business is so immense. I'm bewildered by the fact that I meet so many entrepreneurs that are stressed to the max and they're not really building a saleable company. So this is about building something that's saleable. And you can do it if Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, with no business experience, can create Apple Computer and use a lot of the same principles that I've learned from many, many entrepreneurs and just really observing reality and having now invested in over 100 different businesses. It's not that difficult, but you have to be conscious of that. You have to be conscious of the fact that I am company building. So I think you need to start with that thesis.
Yeah, so with that, here's the deal. Practitioners, especially chiropractors, could be dentists, could be other types of practitioners too, who are technicians that own a business, people who have a certain skill set, a certain regulatory license. You know, what they do is they say, well, I'm opening up a shop so I can work and provide services and collect on those services and make a nice professional level living. But unfortunately, they don't really think in terms of saying, can I structure this thing in a way that makes it saleable? And I think the other implication of what you're saying, which is very important, and I've made the transition. You know, I started as a practitioner in chiropractic for probably about 8 years. And then when I made the segue from practice into business, which became CLA, Chiropractic Leadership Alliance, where now I'm in the business of providing products and services to chiropractors, I had to learn a new way of thinking about business. And then when I sold that business, formed the holding company, which I learned from you, the holding company model. Then it was even more of an evolution of how I approach my thinking in approaching business. So here's the point. You might think that, well, I run a practice, so it's not really a business per se. I'm just making a living, and it's a lifestyle business in your head. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want, where I fund my lifestyle out of this business, and that's its purpose. But I can tell you that everything starts to change when you start to consider that, I'd like to have an entity that independent of me has value. That you create value in the entity based on foundational business principles that even without you, that business has value, which means it's saleable. And also, if you don't sell it, if you're holding on to it for years and years and years, you still have freedom from having to show up every day in the business. And quite frankly, you have more leverage so that you're helping more people by providing more services because it doesn't rely just on you. So,
and one big aha for a lot of people that learn this, all too often they learn it later in life, after the age of 50 or 60, but people would rather not work for you. They'd rather work for an entity. They'd rather work for a company. And as the owner, which is you, if you have employees that would rather work for a company and dedicate themselves to a company, that takes a lot of pressure off you. And one of the things that I teach, which is transformative, is Superman or Superwoman Syndrome, and how that is the most destructive thing to any small company, really any company at all, that has an entrepreneur at the helm and their name's on their door, or their name doesn't have to be on the door, but they are Superman or Superwoman, and that syndrome is insidious. It destroys value inside your business. So my whole thesis is, if you're building a company and your employees work for a company and your clients and patients do business with that company, that is more probable, way more probable, that you're going to create a saleable entity that's worth a lot of money. And that's just one of 48 modules I teach, but this is a big one, and you have to kind of get over that hump, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs are control freaks. You wanted to talk about, and it's on the board behind us, the story of how this all evolved.
well, I was going to say, so I think one of the things that we might circle back to is talk about what gives you the right to be able to give this advice. What's your background? How are you sitting in a position now to say, I've got some wisdom to share relative to these issues and some experience that I'm leveraging for the benefit of the people who are watching this video. So how did your journey start, and how did you end up where you are now with a holding company with multiple investments, and that what you do is you analyze and buy and sell businesses for a living?
Yeah. It's funny, because before I met Patrick a little more than 6 years ago, I never told the story because I didn't think it was important. But through the journey of Patrick and I being on an accountability group every single week, I've come to be more comfortable with my purpose, the purpose of my life, which is to inspire entrepreneurship. So the reason why I'm sitting here with you is I want to inspire you to be an entrepreneur. And to me, a real entrepreneur is someone who owns businesses. They don't work inside of businesses and have stress-filled lives. They own businesses. And the example of a real entrepreneur is Warren Buffett, who has 90 companies, or Richard Branson, who has over 300 companies, both of whom I've spent considerable time with, learning from them. So my story is this. I am the seventh of 9 children, born to Italian-American parents, and tragically, 11 days after I was born, my brother died of leukemia, and he was 4 years old. And it made my dad so committed and attached to me. He never wanted me out of his sight. And he owned a company, and he would take me to the office with him all the time. And in fact, my earliest memories are being at my dad's office. And he was in various businesses in the car business. And because of that, I got to see a huge amount of repetitions from zero, really, my earliest memories, till I was about 11 or 12. And there was a lot of arguing, and there was lawsuits, and there was a lot of conversation. There was board meetings and meetings with bankers and all kinds of stuff. And I started to develop a business sense really early. Unbelievably, when I was 11, my dad came home to the family dinner table where he used to hold court, and he said, "I've got really bad news." And the bad news was, it was his first doctor visit. He was feeling bad. And the doctor did a thorough investigation and found out that he had cancer all throughout his body, his brain, his liver, his lungs, his bones, and they gave him 6 weeks to live. And he made a commitment at that point in time. He said, your mom has never worked before. We don't have any money because the medical bills were accumulating rapidly, and he went bankrupt. And so he said, I have to teach you guys how to be independent. And so he taught us everything that he knew about business, everything he knew about independence, everything he knew about people. And he ended up living for 2.5 years. And those 2.5 years were unbelievable to me. So he died when I was 13 and a half, almost 14. And after he died, my mother couldn't handle it. And mentally, she checked out, and she was committed to a mental institution. And I'm not telling you this to make you feel sorry for me. That's not what this is about. I felt like an adult at 13 and a half. I was independent. All of us were. I remember, Pat, this is funny, delivering the New York Daily News. I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week, and loved it because you made a lot of tips in those days. Anyway, the reason I want to tell that early part is that's where the foundation was laid, lots of repetitions. And so I started a company, my first company, when I was 13 and a half, which was a bicycle repair shop. And everybody from town would come and have their bicycles repaired through us. And I did a series of businesses after that. But the cool thing about the story is, after I graduated from college, I didn't want to go into the engineering world. I got an engineering degree, and the reason I got an engineering degree is because a mentor said if you get an engineering degree, it'll train your brain to think differently. You could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, you could be a business person, you could work on Wall Street, you could do whatever. And skipping through a lot of that, when I was 29 years old, I decided to start a holding company because I was a shareholder in Berkshire Hathaway. I had a Wall Street background prior to that, and I just wanted to make investments and buy companies. And since that time, which has been more than 2 decades, I've had the same desk, the same office, the same chair in the same building, and we've made a lot of investments. And as I said earlier, more than 100. And when you make an investment in our business, you look at several hundred different investments at times before you make one investment. And so taking the repetitions that I had as a kid, and now these repetitions, I've been inside and looked at intimately in my life, thousands of businesses. And what I've learned most from are the mistakes that I've made, the mistakes my dad made, the mistakes that people make inside the businesses that we've invested in, and started to formulate patterns and rituals and modules, and ultimately, with Patrick's help, principles. Business principles that anybody can put on the ground tomorrow if they learn the principles. So that's a very quick, I think that was quick, way of, am I qualified to talk to you? If you have an open mind and you're committed to learning and growing, I'm qualified. If not, no one's qualified.
So a little bit more of the story is that Rick and I met in an accountability group. A mutual friend had put together a group of guys, all of us were entrepreneurs, into a group that would meet every Wednesday morning at early in the morning for 90 minutes. And we have now been, how many years? 6 years?
Over 6 years.
Over 6 years, every Wednesday morning. I mean, when Rick, had no voice or had some issues, he's typing on Skype, we don't miss calls. So we have this incredible accountability experience. So in these accountability calls, as we're talking, Rick would be talking about some of these principles. Business would invariably come up. That was a part of what our accountability was around. And I would have, either certain things I'm striving for or certain challenges I'm having. And he would always have these things of wisdom or these foundational principles he'd discuss to help guide me and other people in the group. And finally, I said, you should teach this stuff. And this is different. Rick isn't somebody who said, hey, I'm going out and I teach for a living and I write books or whatever. He developed these principles for his business and kept them sort of insular. He wasn't out there promulgating them, teaching them. He was just sharing them on the call. And that's when I grabbed him and said, hey, chiropractors need to know about this. And we started with the Chiro Finishing School, which was a business training course for chiropractors, which started with the 12 foundational principles of business as Rick presents them. And then we went from there, and Rick expanded it to Business Finishing School for the general entrepreneurial culture also. So that's where these things come from. They're not MBA programs. As a matter of fact, I don't know if they teach any of this stuff really in classical academics. But I'll tell you,
if you do get an MBA, you know what they're training you for, don't you? They're training you to be an employee inside of a big company, and it's horrible. An MBA, no. These are principles that you can use, not principles that work inside of Procter & Gamble.
Right. And they're entrepreneurial principles, really. So that's where this all evolved from, emerged from. They had profound impact for me in my businesses, and now for many others. And it's been exciting to watch Rick, say, hey, I'm used to just being in my own office, using these principles in my own business, but now saying he's teaching them to the world, and he's created projects out of it that we don't have time to even get into the scope of all of it. But I'll just mention he's got a project called A Billion Entrepreneurs, where he envisions an entrepreneur in every household in the world. And one of the things I think is significant is he's redefined the term entrepreneur in a way that I love. I mean, it really baked in. I finally got it. Where he said, how do you define an entrepreneur? I mean, how can there be an entrepreneur in every home? You know, everybody doesn't own a business. But he defines an entrepreneur as somebody who takes responsibility for outcomes. And if you understand the implications of that, if you are somebody that takes responsibility for outcomes like a business owner has to, then you're an entrepreneur. But you can also be somebody who runs a household and takes responsibility for the outcomes of the kids, the outcomes of, you know, how the house operates and runs. You're still an entrepreneur. And ultimately, you know, and interestingly, you know, Rand made this distinction. He said, you know, when a business person or an entrepreneur, makes mistakes, they're accountable. I'm paraphrasing, but you know, they're injured. They're accountable to the outcome. If a bureaucrat or a legislator, you know, makes a bad decision, they have no accountability except to good intentions. You know, let me put it this way: if you make a bad choice and it has an adverse material impact, you pay. If a legislator or a bureaucrat makes a bad decision, you pay, not them. So we're responsible for outcomes. So what I want to do, Rick, in a short time, go. You want to say something about that?
I just want to say, you know, he brought up 1 billion entrepreneurs, and I love when people say 1 billion entrepreneurs. That's bold. I mean, who do you think you are to create 1 billion entrepreneurs in 25 years? And I love this quote, and I'm going to throw it back at you because you're probably thinking that. If your purpose could be accomplished in your lifetime, you're thinking too small. And I really believe that. I want something massive. I want to inspire people to go find their purpose that could ultimately change the world.
Which is legacy thinking. And I think that's awesome. So what we're going to do here is cover some of the foundations of of some of the things that Rick teaches, or that now I teach with him in many courses. I'll mention that we do twice a year a live course in Dallas, Texas called the Business Mastery Intensive, which I'd encourage you all to come to. But you have this lens, we call it the business lens, which are these 3 concepts, 3 words, that you look at everything through, which are, and I'm going to just kind of do a lightning round with you here on them: simplicity, probability, and leverage. And if you've ever been at a BMI, or if you remember business finishing school, it's like a mantra. Everybody can repeat those 3 words that are involved in business finishing school: simplicity, probability, and leverage. So go. What do you mean by simplicity?
Yeah, it's funny. We live in a complex world, and we find ourselves as human beings just look around. Everybody's reacting. I don't care if you're a stay-at-home mom or you're a business person, you're a teacher, you're reacting. You've got the device in your hand. You've got media all around. You've got bells and whistles going off. Simplicity is about finding the shortest distance from point A to point B and cutting everything else out. The most successful people that I've ever met in my life are fully present to me all the time, and you don't see any gadgets around. Why? Because they're clear on their purpose, they're clear on their values, and they're clear on their objectives. Most small business people, because there's no clarity, what happens? They're running around chasing blinky, shiny objects. So I am massively committed to simplicity in my life in all regards, and that's something you need to learn more about. But in the context of this interview, that's number 1.
All right. Second one we said was probability. What do you mean by probability?
Every decision you make in your life needs to increase the probability that you achieve your objectives, or increase the probability that you're honoring your values in your life. And I see so many business people, they make low probability decisions, they hire their sister-in-law who's out of work, and they wonder why it destroyed their family. Or they marry the wrong person, and then they wonder why they're miserable. You have to make high probability decisions. You know, here's the funny thing, I love this quote. If you're not clear about your values, you're not clear about your objectives, and you're not clear about your purpose, how the hell can you tell the difference between an opportunity and a distraction? You can't. So you have to have clarity there, thereby increasing the probability of success. So this decision-making lens, simplicity, probability, and leverage, is about radically simplifying your life, radically increasing the probability of success. And leverage, I'll just jump right to it. Leverage is about doing everything through other people and other entities. I see too many people running around like a chicken with their head cut off, and they're wondering why they're so stressed all the time. You don't see Richard Branson, Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, who's now passed, running around like chickens with their head cut off, do you? Now, why is it that they can have tens of thousands of employees and be calm, and someone with 3 employees is stressed all the time? Isn't that odd? Think about that. So a lot of what we teach is about giving you your life back. And it leads me to a question. If you're in business, like you're in business, you have a business, how much time do you train on business? And we find that most people don't train at all on business, and that's really shocking. Now, I'm going to tell you something that's a little bit odd, but I'll say it. In the last 30 years, I'm over 50. In the last 30 years, I spend about 15 hours a week, on average, being coached, being in an accountability group, or being in some type of educational program. 15 hours a week. And most people don't have time for an accountability group. It's like, really? So I think what my hope, Pat's too, is that we could reorient you around business and the fact that you're in business and you should train in business.
So let's jump into a couple of the principles. Let's start with the first principle, values-based decision-making, which leads to the doorman principle, which you've literally written a book about. So talk about that.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I watched my 6 older siblings make a lot of mistakes in their life. I watched who they were friends with, who they partnered with, what jobs and careers they took. And what I realized as a kid is that when we make mistakes, we marry the wrong person, we partner with the wrong person, we take the wrong job, we make a dumb mistake in business, like an obvious mistake, that's debilitating. And some of those mistakes take years and years and years to overcome. And I said, with my engineering brain, how can we stop that insanity? And I realized if you can make the right decision all the time, obviously that's not true. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. But if you can increase the probability that you're making the right decision, and then you compound that over time, you'll have massively more success. So we came up with this notion of values-based decision making. What does that mean? Come up with a list of aspirational values for you, not your existing values. Your existing values may be, I get drunk every night. I don't know. But aspirational values. Things like what for you? What would those be? Things like integrity. Things like relationship building. Things like training and development as a value. Things like simplicity, which is on my list. Things like enjoyment. One of my values is enjoyment. Things like partnership. One of my values is partnership. I seek partnerships that are healthy and productive. So you come up with a list of values. Once you have those values locked down, every single decision you make from this point forward is aligned with those values. Because I'm going to tell you something. This is something Pat and I debated. Every single mistake that you've made in your life that caused you the most pain started when you let someone or something in your life that didn't align with your values. And guess what? At the time that you made that decision, your gut was screaming at you, no! But what did you do? You chose opportunity over values. And every time you choose opportunity over values, every single time you pay. And you may not pay now, and you may not pay next week, but you're going to pay. You may pay 10 years from now. So we came up with this concept in business finishing school called the doorman principle. And here's what it is. Imagine that you have an imaginary doorman who's at the door of your life. And the only thing that doorman is going to let into your life are things that fully align with your values. That doorman is going to stop things at the door. And this goes for your personal life, and it goes for your business life. And businesses that exist that honor their values, and they don't let customers in that violate that business's values, those businesses are most successful. Look at Southwest Airlines. Look at Apple. Apple's the most valuable company on earth. And I don't know when you're listening to this, it might be 3 or 4 now. The most valuable company on earth. Why? They're clear on their values, they honor their values, and they espouse their values. I don't know if that's the right word, but they manifest their values in the world. So what does that do? It attracts like-minded customers. And you could do the same thing tomorrow. You could come up with a set of values for yourself. You could come up with a set of values for your business, and you could start honoring them. And you know what happens? Almost overnight, issues and problems vanish. And that's what this is about.
we could talk about this for hours, but let me just sum up and say this. Values-based decision-making is a very deep well. I learned about it years ago, but we still are digging deeper and refining it, as everybody can and does. It really becomes your brand. Your values are the expression of your brand. Now imagine if you got values that are contradictory, then you're going to have a problem. So you have to make sure that you not only have values, but these values are in alignment with each other, and then everybody is singing from that sheet of music, all the employees, the customers, etc. If you're a chiropractor, you got patients in that practice maybe that don't share your values. Those are the ones that sue you. So that's what Rick means. Any challenge you have, when there's the big bumps in the road, the things that derail you, it's because you took opportunities over values. And a perfect example is there's a patient that you're seeing that your gut is telling you doesn't belong in this office. They don't align with our values, but yet they're paying you, or their insurance company is paying you. So you want the opportunity of collecting that revenue as compared to enforcing the values of the doorman that says that patient should be escorted out of our office and referred somewhere else. Those are the ones that sue you. So this is just one little example of what Rick's talking about, and I think you get the general idea. Ultimately, here's what I know. People who are in business, in my personal experience with chiropractors who are in business do zero business training. So I think it's important that you get involved in business training. I'm hoping that some of what we spoke about here will help you with that and can give you at least some sense of what that means. And when we talk about foundational principles of business, that's not the business training I'm talking about. I mean, that is the business training I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the procedures of a practice, for example. Here's how you answer the phone. Here's how you do day 1, day 2 visits. Here's how you do your marketing. I mean, those are important things. Those are very important things. However, all those things sit on top of a foundation, and the foundation are the generic principles of the business that the procedures rest on top of. And that's where we don't train. So that's what I encourage. So I'm going to say this. Business Mastery Intensive, you can go to BMI, like Barry Manilow Integrity, BMI, which stands for Business Mastery Intensive, Dallas.com, and you get more information about the Business Mastery Intensive. It's very affordable to come there. It's a roughly 2-day program, starts on a Friday afternoon, and by the time you watch this, maybe the schedule modifies or change, who knows. But you can go to there and you can find out more and register. Secondly, businessfinishingschool.com, you can go there and learn more about the online course. We love the live event. Some people start at the live event, and then if they like what they had there, which they all do, then they join the course. But if you want to jump into the course now, it's also available to you. Third, what I want to alert you to is that Rick has generously offered a gift. At businessfinishingschool.com, there's a free module there that is on accountability. Not only is the video module there, but so are downloadable materials. So, and I think Rick and I, we did that module together. Here's the whole point. We started in an accountability group. I can tell you, if somebody says to me right now, what's the most important decision you've made in the last few years that's had the most impact on your life, the most positive impact on your life? One thing instantly is going to come to mind, and it's the first thing, is the fact that I joined this accountability group. To be in a weekly rhythm with other people and have an accountability process in place that keeps you on track and moving forward has had the most radical impact, positive impact in my life, more than anything else that I've done. And we've laid out in there how to organize and run an accountability group, and it's free. It's a free module, so you can just go to businessfinishingschool.com. You'll see, I think it says free video module up there. I don't know where it is on the site exactly, but if you go in there and you download those materials and view that module, it will change your life, and it will change your destiny. It will change your future. So I want to say, number one, Rick, thanks for sharing here with the Rustroom audience. Number two, you can watch this multiple times. There's a lot of nuggets in here. Any final words?
Yeah, I just want to tell you that I see too many people complexifying their life, both their business life and their personal life. And you could really have it all, and it could really be straightforward and simple. And that's what we aim to do. In fact, that's what the whole program's about. It's about giving you the success that you want and having and enjoying life. And every single thing that we teach, you can put on the ground tomorrow. So, thanks for listening to Patrick and I. We've been through a lot together the last 6+ years, and I'm looking forward to the next 6+ years. So, thanks for listening.